being Council Members Tolbert and Brenmoen, who is excused.
Please stand if you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda items 2 through 17 are before you for your consideration.
I'd like to pull item 7 for separate consideration. Is there anything else my colleagues would like to pull? Seeing none, I will take a motion by Ms. Yang for the balance of the consent agenda. Roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item number 7, Resolution 20-1399, approving the mayor's appointments of Pang Vang, Samuel Peterson, Mai T. Lai, Rick Vargo, Diana Tasted Damer, Kara Peterson, Courtney Bloomquist, Stephanie Willing, Nicole Parsh, Yao Yang, Carlos Oliveira, Shay Freeberg, Alana Galloway, and Scott Johnson to the Labor Standards Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Ms. Moore. And I want to acknowledge that this is one among a number of appointments that we are making today to important boards and commissions, but I did want to call this one out because, as my colleagues will remember, this Labor Standards Advisory Committee is something that we created by administrative ordinance after we passed our minimum wage ordinance. It was extremely important to us, not only that we fully staff the Human Rights Department to educate and enforce about minimum wage, but also that we continue to have community involved in helping spread the word about and make sure that folks were held accountable to and informed about their rights under this very important law. So I just want to acknowledge that that we did that work, and we do need to pause every so often and remember what feels like decades ago that we created the ordinance that required this committee, and excited that these folks are all willing to serve, and thank them in advance for their service. And I move approval. Is there any discussion of that? Roll call.
Tao.
Oh, I'm so
Aye.
sorry. I'm sorry. Councilmember Prince.
It was.
Go ahead. Oh, now you're on mute, but you weren't before.
Oops.
You're good.
Now you're back.
Am I good now? It shows as mute here. Anyway, I just wanted to say ditto. So I'm really glad that we formed this Business and Employee Advisory Committee. I think that being able to hear directly from practitioners in the community about how it's working, how the outreach is going, is vitally important. And I'm really grateful to HERO because there is a lot of heavy lifting in the labor standards area. And hopefully, and I believe it will make their job easier. And I think also Minneapolis, which also has a Business and Employee Advisory Committee, would probably be willing to share some of their lessons from getting theirs up and running. So thank you, and I will be voting in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, sorry to cut you off. Roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 18, Resolution 20-1439, recognizing the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day in the city of St. Paul.
Ms. Prince?
Thank you. Indigenous Peoples Day has passed, but I couldn't let the celebration go without honoring it by way of resolution. And I'm going to read much of the resolution because it refers to things that we are doing in St. Paul that are really groundbreaking in terms of our work with our Indigenous communities. So bear with me. I'm not reading every word, but key portions. Whereas recognizing that St. Paul, and as it is known in the Dakota language, Imaniza Ska, is a Dakota land, we acknowledge the importance of the history of the Dakota people, their sacred places that exist here, and the history and contributions of all Indigenous people in Minnesota. Whereas the City of St. Paul has recognized Indigenous Peoples Day since 2015, whereas a highlight of this year's Indigenous Peoples Day activities was the launch of the Wakan Teepee Center, a Dakota-led project in the heart of Dakota homelands that, in a partnership between the Lower Phelan Creek Project and the City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department, is creating a new interpretive center at this sacred site within the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary. And whereas, in consultation with the tribal historic preservation officers from the Upper Sioux community, the Lower Sioux community, the Shakopee, Mdewakanton Sioux, and Prairie Island Indian community, the City of St. Paul Parks released in September Indian Mounds, a sacred place of burial, cultural landscape study and messaging plan. And whereas this groundbreaking study provides a vision for the future of this park, guided by Mitakuye Owasin, reflecting the interconnectedness of people, land, water, sky, plants, and animals to provide a place for reverence, remembrance, and healing in a way that protects, honors, and recognizes the sacredness of this location. And whereas, with gratitude for the leadership of local Indigenous leaders, the City of St. Paul and Ramsey County engaged in a process to replace the murals in the City Council and County Board chamber at the Ramsey County Courthouse, St. Paul City Hall, to better represent the history and contributions of diverse multicultural communities in our city. And whereas, in continued recognition that the Dakota people were exiled from this land that became St. Paul and Ramsey County, and that 19th century laws passed to prohibit their return to St. Paul and Ramsey County remain in effect. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of St. Paul does recognize October 12th, 2020 as Indigenous Peoples Day, and be it further resolved that the St. Paul City Council commits to researching the immoral laws prohibiting the return of the Dakota people to this area and working toward their repeal. And be it further resolved that the St. Paul City Council commits to working with the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners in conjunction with the Chamber Mural Project to commission artwork acknowledging the Dakota people's original and unceded claim to the land upon which St. Paul and Ramsey County have been established. So that is what is before us. And thanks to everyone, all of my colleagues, for all the work that you've done on the mural project, the work of our St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department on the cultural landscape study at Indian Mounds Park, which is just a block from my house, that has been really life-changing for community members who participated with the tribal historic preservation officers to be part of the redesign and reinterpretation of the park. We have a lot that we can feel good about as we move forward, but we owe such a tremendous debt of gratitude to our Dakota and our Indigenous leaders for hanging in there with us and helping us get this right. So with that, I'll move approval.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Prince. That was a beautiful resolution and so eloquent. I liked how you tied the celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day to the very specific projects and initiatives that are going on in the city right now. Councilmember Jalali.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Prince, and to everyone who was a part of this resolution. I just wanted to express my appreciation also, and I was really inspired on Indigenous Peoples Day earlier this week by how much information is shared and how these days of recognition matter because they visibilize a history that is erased. There is an Indigenous community alive and thriving today. Too often people talk about Indigenous people in the past tense, and that's wrong, and that's a form of structural violence against them. And so I'm committing myself to learning and to self-education, to the work in the resolution that we're doing to ongoing conversation with our Indigenous communities. I'm really excited about things like recently Ward 4 was visited by the Story Stroll project mentioned through the Parks Department, talking about the history of water and the Dakota people. And I think that's just incredibly powerful. I also want to just acknowledge that this work is urgent because too many Indigenous and Native people in our community are fighting for survival right now, are camping outside in encampments on stolen land, and it's unconscionable. And I want to lift up that the work we're doing for equity and to address our most vulnerable neighbors couldn't be more important to living out the truth of this resolution. So to the full range of strengths, opportunities, and challenges our Indigenous communities are facing today, I recommit myself to the work. I'm really grateful and humble for the patience and perseverance that we have been shown. And I appreciate this resolution so much today. We'll absolutely be voting in support. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Jalali. Are there any other comments on this item? Seeing none, I will just say ditto to those comments. I appreciate Councilmember Prince, your leadership in introducing this. And I don't think there could be a better year or more important time to be honoring the history of the land on which our city sits, and to Ms. Jalali's point, the present involvement and leadership of our Indigenous community members. So I also will support this motion. With that, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 19, Resolution Public Hearing 20-223, providing standards for redistricting of wards in 2021.
And I believe we have a staff report. Welcome, Mr. Mansky. Oh, I think you're on mute. Still on?
Okay.
Now not.
You can hear me
There you
now.
go.
Okay.
Yep.
Madam President, as I think all the council members know, this is the census year. Next year will begin the redistricting process in Minnesota. The legislature has the first shot at this. When they are done, then the Charter Commission will proceed to do a new ward plan for the next 10 years. And to assist them in that endeavor, since this can be a somewhat complex and controversial activity, especially because the last 10 years we've seen considerable population growth in St. Paul, really for the first time in 50 years. Our population appears to be up at least 30,000 people, maybe a little more. And so as a consequence, it was thought best to give some guidance to the Charter Commission on exactly what they should be doing. And so just very briefly, the resolution that you have in front of them has standards that can be used by the Charter Commission. And building into that, just the history of what the Supreme Court and what the Minnesota courts have seen as appropriate for redistricting over the years. And so those criteria like population equality, compactness of the districts, contiguity of districts, recognition of communities of interest, and dealing with issues like the recognition of the protection of the groups in the Voting Rights Act have all been incorporated in this resolution. And again, as I said, the Charter Commission will proceed with this as soon as legislative redistricting is completed. Depending on frankly what happens on Election Day, that activity is likely to conclude either toward the end of 2021 or early in 2022. And so that's probably the time schedule that we're looking at for adoption of a new ward plan.
Great. And I know, Mr. Mansky, I appreciate you've done briefings, I believe, with many of my colleagues and with me. And I felt like it was a political science lesson just to get to hear some of the considerations that you mentioned that the Supreme Court has weighed in on and that can and can't be considered when doing this kind of important work. So thanks for being part of this and for educating us. Any questions for Mr. Mansky from my colleagues? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Mansky.
Thank you.
Any discussion of this resolution? Seeing none, Mr. Tao moves approval. Roll call.
Vice President Naker, you might want to mention that this was a public hearing and we were taking comments online and by phone.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. I do want to mention that, and we have been, and Councilmember Tao would move to close the public hearing and approve.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted.
Jane Prince here. I just want to thank Mr. Mansky for his great work and guidance on this as well. I meant to say that earlier.
Thank you, Councilmember Prince. I'm sure we'll be seeing you again.
Item number 20, excuse me. Resolution public hearing 20-219, amending the financing and spending plans in the fire department in the amount of $78,257.86 for the Minnesota Task Force 1 team reimbursement from the city of Edina.
And this is a public hearing. Comments have been accepted by phone and email, and Councilmember Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 21, resolution public hearing 20-221, amending the spending and financing plans. Oh, I'm sorry. Item 21 is being withdrawn, so I won't need to read it. Item number 22 is also being withdrawn. Item 23, resolution public hearing 20-217, amending the 2020 budget by adding the 2018 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant.
This is a public hearing, and comments have been accepted by phone and email. Therefore, Councilmember Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 24, resolution public hearing 20-224, amending the redevelopment plan for the Ford site redevelopment project area and approving the adoption of a second amendment to the tax increment financing plan for the Ford site redevelopment tax increment financing district.
This is a public hearing, and comments have been accepted by phone and email. Therefore, Councilmember Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. For the following items, no objections to the legislative hearing officer's recommendations were received, and therefore she recommends adoption of the following. Item 25, RLH VO 20-47, 1544 Beach Street. Item 27, RLH FCO 20-132, 935 Forest Street. Item 28, RLH TA 20-548, 181 Front Avenue. Item 30, RLH TA 20-537, 585 Jefferson Avenue. Item 31, RLH VBR 20-63, 1235 Margaret Street. Item 32, RLH SAO 20-22, 1908 Roblin Avenue. Item 34, RLH VO 20-42, 609 Sims Avenue. Item 35, RLH TA 20-534, 178 Wheelock Parkway West. Item 36, RLH AR 20-125, There are various addresses. Item 37, RLH AR 20-126, also various addresses. And item 38, RLH AR 20-127, also various addresses. So the motion is to adopt these items.
So moved by Councilmember Prince. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following items, no objection to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendation was received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoption of the following items. Item 29, RLH TA 20-525, 171 Granite Street, and item 33, RLH RR 20-40, 1179 7th Street East. And the motion is to amend and adopt.
So moved by Councilmember Yang. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted as amended. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested, and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. This is item 26, RLH TA 20-548, 1692 Edmond Avenue.
And I believe we have a staff report, Ms. Mormont.
Brief one, Vice President Naker. At 1692 Edmond, we're looking at a vacant building fee. This property had a fire in September of 2019. It has been a long-term problem property, both in terms of code violations and police matters. Before the fire occurred, since that time, there was no change, and now the rehab is underway. It's been 13 months since it entered the vacant building program. What's in front of you today is the very first vacant building fee. It covers the time period of September of 2019 through September of 2020. I would tell you that it does not look like the project is going to be done in the near future. There are still permits that need to be pulled even to continue with the work. It seems pretty straightforward. The year has come and gone, plus a little bit that the vacant building fee is appropriate. The content of the email attached to your record is from the organization doing the rehab of the property, and they think they should just get a standard waiver for their client.
Thank you, Ms. Mormont. So the recommendation, I think Ms. Jalali would move to adopt the legislative hearing officer's recommendation. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. That was our final item.
I believe that brings us to the end. All right. So it is good news time around the table. Does anyone have any good news from the wards to share? Looking at Ms. Prince. Ms. Prince, you never let me down. You are on mute, though.
You know, you're on mute is said to be the most often repeated phrase in 2020. So happy to unmute myself. This coming Friday, tomorrow, October 15th from 7:30 to 10 a.m., the Serenity Marion Center of St. Paul, which is senior lifestyle housing from independent living to nursing care and memory care in the old Mounds Park Hospital on the corner of Thorne Street, or better yet, let's say the corner of Burns Avenue and Earl Street is the best way to find it. We'll be having a coffee and donuts drive-through tomorrow morning from 7:30 to 10 a.m. They're accepting non-perishable food items or money donations for the local food shelf. And they just want to be there for our community. And we're so grateful that they are our neighbor because they are really a wonderful place. I suspect that this is in lieu of their usual Halloween trick-or-treat event in which all the neighborhood kids are invited in and to go from door to door. And I'm sure it's hard not only on the seniors who love that event, but it also is hard on the kids in the neighborhood because my 35-year-old son still remembers how much fun he had at the Marion Serenity Center on Halloween. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Mr. Lally?
Thank you. I feel bad because mine isn't like necessarily good news from the wards, but I do, given that this news item came out today, want to make sure folks know before we sign off. I think this was brought up briefly when we talked about redistricting that the Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to stop the census tomorrow. They were supposed to end it October 31st. It's now ending October 15th. So I know that we've all worked really hard this year and our community partners have worked even harder to make sure that everybody gets counted. And this just feels like a really, it's so gut wrenching and it's extremely disappointing, but we still count. And now's the time. If you haven't gone to 2020census.gov, please make sure you self-respond. And then reach out to someone. I personally reached out to my whole Iranian family on the WhatsApp family chat and was just like, everybody do your census. And especially our immigrant communities of color, folks who are undercounted. There's a lot of folks who just still don't know what the census is. And then we don't get the funds that we deserve. And so please mobilize your networks one last time. I feel sick to my stomach that I even have to make a desperate ask like that, but it's because we're fighting as hard as we can, even against the odds. So thank you to everyone for all you've done this year for the census, and let's get our community over the finish line, even in light of this really disappointing decision. I want to make sure folks know that before we sign off, and thank you again.
Thanks, Mr. Lally. Thanks for all your leadership on getting people involved in the census this year with absolutely negative help from the federal government. It's the opposite of community engagement, and I'm so glad you brought that up right now. Ms. Prince.
And Ms. Jalali, it's cut off tomorrow, October 15th, tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're not even giving them until the end of October.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks. It's ending 2 weeks early. And I'm even seeing, I'll share on the specific info, but like by Hawaiian Standard Time on the 15th, so a certain time of day, you can't get counted anymore. And we'll absolutely, there's been a lot of activity on my dashboard today of people trying to figure out like when exactly can you still respond and misinformation. So we're just advising people to get online, take 5 minutes, get it done if you haven't by now. But one thing that's a silver lining is so many people have said, oh, I already did that. I'll go ask my mom or dad or nephew or whoever. So yeah. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. Of course.
Great suggestion on the WhatsApp. I'm gonna contact my family on our WhatsApp.
Hit up the WhatsApp
do it
and
too.
Get your people out. Yes, exactly.
That's right. Ms. Yang.
Thank you. Also, thanks Councilmember Jalali for mentioning about the census. I have been reading the data on it, and looks like 99.9% of households in Minnesota have responded. So that's really great. We have just a bit more to go. And I wanted to just remind people about COVID testing tomorrow and on the 16th. There's going to be testing from 2 to 6 p.m. at New Hope Baptist Church. And then on the 17th, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., they'll do testing at the Aldrich Arena. And then on the 21st, from 2 to 6 p.m., it's going to be at the Consulate of Mexico. So these are all St. Paul areas, with the exception of the Aldrich Arena, which is in Maplewood. And so you can find all of these information on the Ramsey County website.
Thanks so much, Ms. Yang. Any other good news? Ms. Yang, is that your old hand or a new hand? Sorry.
Old one.
Hand? Old hand. Okay. I think I just made up that term. Okay, if there's nothing else, I just want to share quickly in an example of what good community engagement does look like, unlike what we're seeing at the national level. Mayor Carter has announced that he's going to be holding 12 Forward Together conversations, an opportunity for community members to give their input on what community needs look like, especially important right now as we are going through our budget process. You can find more information if I just Googled Forward Together St. Paul. You can see all the dates and times for these virtual conversations. I'm going to be attending the one tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m., but they're happening at many dates and times. So hopefully folks can attend and give your feedback. There is nothing else to come before us this afternoon. Thanks so much to all my colleagues. We are adjourned.